Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions, also known as MVP, not that long ago announced a fight between former UFC superstars Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano, coming out of retirement to fight each other, but also Francis Ngannou, his return to MMA once again after having a boxing match against Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, debuting in the PFL and destroying Renan Ferreira in one round. But even that was nearly 2 years ago. Now MVP has a hold of Francis Ngannou. That's a whole nother thing between Francis Ngannou and the beef that he has with Jake as well. They were going at it at the press conference a little bit too, which I think is very interesting. It's something I'll talk about another day. But I think the biggest news that came out of all of this was the most recent fight that was announced on the card between Nate Diaz and his return to the cage since fighting Tony Ferguson in 2022. Obviously had a boxing match with Jake Paul and Jorge Masvidal, and is now fighting Platinum Mike Perry, BKFC superstar. Hasn't had an MMA fight in quite some time. Also fought Jake Paul. Two former UFC fighters. Nate Diaz obviously being the bigger name here, but this caused a lot of talk around the MMA scene, and not just because it's a fight that I think got away from the UFC, but also because this will be MVP's first ever MMA event that they've done, and not just that. This is the first time that there will be an MMA fight live on Netflix. I don't know everything in full detail when it comes to number of MMA events that they have signed on Netflix, but you have to remember this was another streaming platform that the UFC was in talks with before they got the deal with Paramount over the line. And this just seems like a massive thing for MVP. Obviously, MVP had they have a relationship with Netflix. They've put on Jake Paul fights, a couple of Jake Paul fights, on the one with Mike Tyson and Anthony Joshua, obviously, and putting on the trilogy with Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. As I said, I don't know what MVP's plans are with Netflix with MMA events and how many they have signed to do. If they already have a number of events that they want to do in MMA, or if they're even going to prioritize MMA that much. But this is very massive for Jake Paul and MVP. I think Mike Perry and Nate Diaz is a fight that the UFC would have wanted. Why would they have not? Nate Diaz will always have that pull anywhere he fights, and regardless of wherever he goes. He is a superstar. Mike Perry is also a very well-known name in the MMA scene. Like I said, I really think this is one that got away from the UFC. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I saw a video on X that Ariel Helwani posted from what I believe was about a year ago, with Dana White at a post-fight presser, speaking about how he has a massive fight announcement that will completely blow everyone away, and that absolutely nobody will see coming. And it left a lot of people to realize he was definitely talking about Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. I mean, because I don't know if it was just me, but the day that Gina versus Ronda was announced, I was in complete shock. Like, to be completely honest, it didn't even come to my mind that Ronda Rousey would ever come out of retirement to fight in the cage again. Same with Gina, but not only the video made people think that that was definitely the fight Dana was speaking of, but also at the first press conference, Ronda Rousey went completely off on the UFC, completely trashed them, talking trash about them, the White House card. Ronda obviously has had a bit of a history with the UFC and a rocky history. But her talking like this, it really seemed like they were talking to her about putting that fight on also. That's why she lashed out like that. But it might have been a thing solely just based on money or whatever reason. I don't know why it fell out or whatever it was, but I just think this whole thing is crazy. Like not only them fighting on Netflix, but to have people are going to watch this fight. Like this fight will do good numbers. It being on Netflix live for everyone to see and for free, obviously. I don't, again, like when it comes to the fight, I don't think it's going to look pretty, especially the fight with Ronda and Gina. And but having Francis Ngannou as your co-main event is pretty massive, pretty massive. Obviously, I don't think Francis is someone that the UFC was obviously looking to come back. Him and Dana have a very pretty bad relationship. Dana has already publicly said that he doesn't respect Francis Ngannou, and Francis has had things to say about him as well. And it's a bit of a shame because you always look at the heavyweight division in the UFC and what's going on right now. Obviously, Alex Pereira is fighting Cyril Gane for the interim Tom Aspinall champion. But it would be lovely to have Francis Ngannou back in that mix. But again, like I said, it's a shame that it's probably not going to happen. I would obviously love it to happen, but it probably won't. Fighting Felipe Lins, who was a former UFC fighter as well, fought in the PFL 2, I believe, most recently, but um, it's not a good matchup. It just isn't. But you'll probably get like a viral Francis Ngannou knockout, if I'm honest. It's probably what's gonna happen. But it's good to have him there. Like I said, Francis is a very big name also. But I think the biggest one is Nate Diaz, Mike Perry, man. I really do. Like I really think that one got away from the UFC as well. Like I just it would make no sense for me not to think that Ronda and Gina got away, but this one couldn't also, you know. And why would the UFC not want to put this fight on? Like I said, Nate is a superstar. He is a superstar. He will pull wherever he goes. However old he gets, he will pull. Like I said, and I think out of these three fights, this fight is probably the most intriguing to me personally. Like I don't think it's that bad of a matchup. Like you could bring up a case for either of them winning the fight, Mike Perry or Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is obviously out of his prime, clearly, obviously, and he's older. Um, and he didn't look relatively good in his last fight against Tony Ferguson. Again, was years ago, and didn't look that good in his boxing matches either. And Mike Perry, obviously, like I said, made a very big name for himself outside of the UFC and became really the main face of BKFC before Conor got involved, obviously. But it's I think that's the best fight to come out of the three. I really do. Like I said, I don't think Ngannou and Felipe Lins is a good matchup. I just think, for instance, Ngannou does whatever he wants. Will probably knock him out in the first round, like he did to Hannah Fajeda. And I actually think he submitted Hannah Fajeda, maybe. I can't remember, but either way, I don't think Ronda and Gina is going to be a very. I don't think it's going to look very pretty. They're both fighters that are coming off of long retirements. I mean, they were retired, and they're both. Ronda is about to be 40 years old, I believe. Gina's already in her 40s. I don't know how pretty the fight's gonna look. Like I said, the most intriguing one is Nate Diaz, Mike Perry, and I think there will be more fights announced on this card, obviously. And I'm excited. I'm very curious to see what the rest of that card looks like too. But like I said, I think this is a fight that the UFC would have wanted to put on. I don't know why. I remember seeing a video back when Mike Perry was really getting a lot of hype around BKFC because he was just winning against Jeremy Stevens and Luke Rockhold. And I remember seeing a video of him speaking to Hunter Campbell on the phone before like UFC 300 or something, and I don't know how official that was, and But I really think he was wanting to go back to the UFC, and I think the UFC definitely thought about it for sure. And when you see guys like Jeremy Stevens obviously went out of the UFC and came back and not came back to the UFC not that long ago. Had a couple of boxing matches when he left, went to BKFC, fought Mike Perry and a few others, and now he's back in the UFC. So why would I not? Why would Mike Perry or Nate Diaz not be able to do it? You know what I mean? Especially because another point, there's a lot of speculation on Conor McGregor coming back to the UFC and who his opponent is going to be. And now that Nate Diaz is fighting on MVP and is fighting Mike Perry on this card, a lot of us are thinking Conor McGregor is going to come back this summer. And Nate Diaz would have been a front runner for me in terms of me thinking that he would fight him. And now that just doesn't seem like the case. Like I said, I don't know what kind of contract Nate Diaz signed or how many fight deals he signed with them. Or if it's just a one fight deal, I have no idea. But maybe it could be one that's prepping him to fight in the summer. I actually, I'm not sure when this card is set to be. May 16th. But like I said, Nate Diaz was one of the front runners for me to fight Conor McGregor next. And now this leads me to believe another question. Who's Conor McGregor fighting? Who is he fighting? And I thought about it for a little bit. And this is something that a lot of people are speculating too. It's not just me. Conor McGregor might be fighting Charles Oliveira for the BMF title next. And it's, I can make a whole nother video on that too. It's crazy not only to say that, I just think it's a horrible matchup too for Conor, obviously, but it'll do well. Everyone's gonna watch it, obviously. It's Conor McGregor and Charles Oliveira. But I mean, this whole thing is just crazy, man. Like I said, I didn't expect any of this. It just came, it all got announced very quickly. But we're all gonna be watching, so yeah, man, this is my thoughts. Very, very crazy fight news. I'll predictions for Yevloyev, Murphy coming up in a few days. And yeah, man, these are my thoughts on Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano being announced, Ngannou coming back, Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry, Conor McGregor possibly fighting Charles Oliveira next. Who knows? All I know, this is very crazy. It's exciting as well. I'll thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And